Now, did you know that the annual turnover for farming machinery in New Zealand is about $1.3 billion? In a recent article on farmersweekly.co.nz, Jared Pickard discusses the tractor and machinery sales that have dropped 60% in April alone and 25% back for the first 3 months of this year, having a blow to the sector. And of course, there's this new depreciation support, but it's vastly different from our Aussie cousins. Tama, the organisation that represents many contractors, dealerships and manufacturers, has called on the government for support. And joining us now in Sarah's Country is President of Tama, John Tulloch. John, good evening.
Good evening. Nice to see you.
Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. So you've written a letter that you've sent to Minister O'Connor. Are you able to tell us some details around what is in that?
I can, but first I'd just like to say, in your introduction, you said we represented the contractors.
Oh, my apologies.
Not the contractors, that's a separate organisation, so that's the Rural Contractors Federation. But we represent the tractor and machinery importers and the manufacturers in New Zealand. So yes, we have seen a significant drop in the tractor sales, which is obviously a leading indicator of what's going on in our sector. And okay, we had lockdown in April, so there wasn't a lot happening or could happen. But nonetheless, we're about 33% down for the year to date. And so what we don't want is for that to lead to a drop like we had after the GFC, which was about a halving of the tractor and machinery sales and took about 8 years to recover. And so we have written to Minister O'Connor to request an increase to what they call the low value asset write down, which allows small businesses to write down up to $5,000. I think it was designed so that people working from home could buy themselves a laptop and a desk and so on and get started working from home. But really, if we want it to transition into a higher value write down so that it can stimulate a little bit more business for our sector.
So, I mean, what are some of the ways that we can actually improve on-farm productivity over this time? What are some of those handbrakes that have really come on? You've explained depreciation as one of those levers, but what other things, apart from obviously cash into the sector, will help?
Well, one of the big handbrakes that's coming is about people coming to New Zealand. Obviously, it's going to be limited. The immigration thing, and you've got to realise that a lot of people driving these tractors and machinery are people from overseas, and it's unlikely they're going to be coming this year. So that's going to put a big handbrake on the sector. And we've indicated to that we're keen to get involved if necessary in training. It's more of a contractor issue probably than our issue, the tractor and machinery industry. But certainly it is a big one that we simply haven't got enough trained people available to jump in and do those jobs, because let's face it, the tractors and the machinery have become far more complex, and you can't just put anyone in the seat these days.
Yeah, and obviously a great collaboration between two industry associations to provide those training platforms to encourage the redeployment of Kiwis. I mean, it's looking at 150,000 loss of jobs potentially into the sector, John. But also, we've got some great innovation when it comes to manufacturing of our implements here in New Zealand, and our feed-out wagons, etc. Do you think this government appreciate the growth of local manufacturing in those areas?
Well, we haven't got figures on exactly the number of jobs there, but certainly our members represent a good portion of those New Zealand manufacturers, and we would like to see those companies survive through this and even thrive, and a lot of them are making feed-out wagons, feed-out equipment, implements for tractors and front-end loaders and that sort of thing. And they're right through the country. So I know everybody is under pressure, but we would like to see those jobs in particular protected.
So what is the potential loss of jobs in comparison to, obviously, our last dip, the GFC?
Yeah, that's very hard to predict. We think in our sector there's probably about 2,500 to 3,000 jobs in total. And as I said earlier, we're not sure about the exact number of New Zealand manufacturing jobs. But let's say if we had a dip like we did during the GFC, which was about a 45% decline, well, you could imagine over 1,000 jobs going.
Excuse me. Yeah, and I mean, the thing is, too, it comes down to the confidence of farmers to be able to spend, and farmers are really good at tightening their wallets when they need to, John, as you're aware. And so, of course, that is having the flow on into on-farm productivity that you're suggesting. So how also, can the government support this side of it?
Yeah, well, what we've suggested is that they increase that threshold to as much as 150 or even 200,000, so that farmers and contractors who are thinking about purchasing an item have incentive to do so, and it will reduce their tax bill at the end of the year. It would only be a limited incentive, perhaps until the end of the year, and then it finishes. So they would need to get in and utilise it, otherwise they would lose that opportunity. And that's what we've suggested to the ministers. Who knows? Could be in the budget. We're not sure. I've spoken to our local MP, Kieran McAnulty, about it, and we sent the letter to Minister O'Connor.
And lastly, in regards to, we're speaking next to Susan Kilsby from ANZ, how readily available is credit on capital infrastructure expenditure, capital expenditure to these types of items? Is the bank sort of pulling in, or is there a support, as O'Connor has said to me in the past, to stimulate the primary sector?
Yeah, it seems like there has been a little bit of a shift more towards finance companies rather than banks financing the equipment. Interest rates are still low, but probably may have increased a little bit because of the overall cost of borrowing. And yeah, it'll be interesting to watch that move as we go down the track. But a lot of those bigger ticket items are financed.
Thank you so much for taking the time to join us as President for Tama, John Tulloch, here on Sarah's Country.
This is Sarah's Country.